Hi, everyone. Welcome to our virtual mud lab. This is in conjunction with Indiana Children in Nature Network, Nature Play Days. I am the state coordinator of Indiana Children in Nature Network, or ICAN. I'm also known as Loose Parts Nature Play. So I have a podcast and a book and a group and things like that, getting kids and educators and families outside and giving resources to help with that. For one option this week, we thought we would have a virtual mud lab and just share a few tips and tricks of things that may work easily for you. I will share kind of along with this some things that you might want to have on hand. First of all, you might want to have some soil or sand. It could even be small pebbles, any of those kinds of things, just something that can be manipulated and changed a little bit. I have a little bucket of it, and I just I have a lot of soil here, as you can see, so I can dig some up. We have a dirt digging area in our backyard. But I also have just brought over a potted plant. You can see it's got some leaves on it. But we aren't growing anything in this season, and there is plenty of soil in it. So that can be another way of doing this, just having if you have an extra potted plant kind of thing, using the soil from that's the plant's dead, of course, or just having an empty pot full of soil so that children know that there's a designated space for that. So some soil, dirt, sand, etc. You want some water. I just filled some up in a pitcher that I can pour from. As you can see, it's very muddy. It's been used in lots of mud sessions, and having things to pour from can be really helpful. Then also just some thrifted kitchen utensils and items. So I've got some measuring cups, some spoons and whisks and things of the sort. It's going to kind of depend on what you've got, and it really doesn't matter what it is. I like having some little muffin tins of some sort. And then this is actually something that I love. I collect as many different sizes and ways to pour things. I find, especially with younger children, that being able to pour from one thing to another is a schema, repeated behavior that they continually fill, dump, pour, fill, dump, pour, and they'll go back and forth for a long time with that. And then also we want to have some type of stick or spoon for mixing things. I find a stick works really well, but spoons are great too, just kind of depending on what you have available with you. And I also suggest having a towel or something nearby so that you can have some cleanup if needed and when needed, because let's be honest, it's going to be a little messy at times. Some extras that you might have, if you have a garden and have like mint or basil or something like that, and it's prolific this year, cutting a few herbs would be a great thing. That's going to bring in that smell as well with it. I don't have any potted herbs right now, but I did just find some green plants that were growing where I did not want them to be. They were growing up the side of my house. And so I just pulled those down so that I've got some green stuff that I can add in and such with my mud creations today. You also might get some flowers. Sometimes I have purchased flowers. I do purposely plant impatiens in my yard every single year so that I find that they work well in shade, and that's where I live, in the middle of the shade. But I find that they work well. They give a lot of color. They have seeds that pop, explode when you touch them. And so the seeds are flung everywhere. And these are something that children know that they can use. And I also, there are some plants in our yard, like periwinkle, that are an invasive species. They have these little purple flowers. And so those are flowers that I tell children you can use as many of these. But then some of our special plants like trillium, which have already passed, they're early spring plant. But those ones, if you pick it, the whole plant will die. And so I try to find flowers that I don't mind children using. And I may even go ahead and collect the amount that they're okay to use for that day. So I always just say find responsibly sourced flowers. And even sometimes if I have a bouquet or something like that, that's going soon, or I'll even purposely buy flowers for some mud play or other potion type play and things of that sort. You might have some tree cookies or slabs that you can use as different surfaces and things of the sort. Sometimes even bring out like a mortar and pestle as well, which can be really fun. And then also, I like to have just a collection of natural items that have fallen from the ground. I live in a house that's surrounded by hickory trees and oak trees. So I have a lot of hickory hulls and acorns here that are available to be used. I've also got a little collection of sticks and such that we can use in different ways. And I literally just grab this off of the ground. This is all the stuff that's falling out of our trees right now. We've got a lot of cottonwood, so it kind of looks like this little white stuff. And then we've got these catechins, I think they're called, little starts of seed pods and such. So these are just things that are growing in our trees. That's, I think, maybe where the flowers are. I am not sure. I need to investigate that a little bit more. But we've just got a variety of natural materials that we can use in a variety of ways. Another thing that you might do is just have index cards and something to write with. I find that kind of extending our mud play with recipes is a really great way to include literacy, mathematical skills, but then also family traditions. So sometimes as I go into preschools and such, I will share like a recipe from my grandma, especially like when my grandmother passed away and I was thinking about her, I'm like, my grandmother just passed away and this is a recipe that she would often make. And I would share that recipe. And then I was like, I wonder what kind of recipes we can come up with in our play today. And then give children an opportunity to think about and write the recipes. It may look like a bunch of scribbles depending on how old your child is, but it gives some options and things, but they often know exactly what they mean by the marks that they make on their paper. So have them read their recipe to you, and that can be a great extension. There is a book called The Best Mud Pie Ever, which can be a good kind of read aloud before you get into some recipes and thinking about a way to make something. One other thing that I like to do sometimes too is use spices. I will often like save if there are spices that are expired or empty containers of spices, I will save those. I don't ever give children a whole big container like this. That's just what I grabbed today. I might take a little bit, a couple of spoonfuls and put it in a small container, or put a little bit into those empty containers. Or I will be the one that dispenses the spices, depending on how big of a group I'm working with and things of that sort. But having spices just gives you another sensory aspect to that. So dried lavender is another good option and things of that sort as well. So these are just some basics that I like to have, and I might not have all of them at once. And I actually just find that children just want to explore and play and have opportunities in the way that they do it. So shall we get started? So if I have a container, some type of container with some soil in it, however much you want to do, I would probably start with just a little bit of water at a time. So I just put it in. I might feel what the soil feels like in my hands. We've been kind of in a little bit of a drought. We had a little bit of rain yesterday, but not much. But my soil is really easily is friable, it's dry. And I may just kind of feel what that feels like before I put any water in it. And then likewise, I may even feel what our water feels like. Some children will not want to touch things in a mud kitchen. That's why we have things like sticks and spoons to be tools to use with us. But then after I feel things, get my hands ready to experience this more, I might pour a little bit of water in. I would probably go for less at first, depending on what my option is. Some other things that I also might like to have are big soup pots. I find that people often realize they don't need these, or they upgrade their pans and things. And so I've gotten a lot of donations of just old soup pots, or look in thrift stores and things of the sort for it as well. And with my soup pots, I like to have ladles. I find that children love the dumping and pouring and all of those kinds of things with that as well. And they're great during the snow for making like rounded snowballs and such that turn into meatballs and caterpillars and all of those lovely things. But so if you've got some of those, I find that children often will want more water in something like this and less soil. So you might make a soup or a potion with this. And even something like stone soup can be a fun thing to do in a soup pot. But okay, back to this soil that we have in this container. I'm going to use my stick to stir and just seeing which end I like better. And I'm seeing that, this is a fair amount of soil and it's pretty dry. And so even though I put some soil in it, if I want mud, I'm going to want some more. So really it's kind of a experiment, an inquiry, trial and error kind of thing. I may end up with too much water for what my purposes are. And, I may not, as a child, I may not know what my purposes are just quite at first. So you can see that it's kind of getting more together and such. It's a little bit moister. It's a little bit easier to stir. I may go ahead and experiment with this just a little bit. I may put more water in it later, but we'll see. So just kind of mix in and mix in and mix in. I like to smell it sometimes. And even before it's wet, it's going to have a little bit different smell. With the water, it's a little bit more pronounced and such. So yeah, just mix, 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 mix. And at this point, I may consider what I want to do. I could use like a scoop measuring cup to get things out. I also may have like a small shovel or trowel or something of the sort. I think I'm going to make muffins to get started. I know that this is something that children like to do frequently. So I'm just going to go ahead and put some in. I've got some extra leaves in here. I'm going to go ahead and throw those out because I don't need those. But then I can start working on my muffins and getting those curated in here. We'll add some more. And I find that celebration play often happens as part of mud play. So like celebrating a feast or something of the sort. And especially with muffin tins like this, I find that children want to make cupcakes a lot for birthdays. And so I may kind of lean into that play as part of what I'm doing right now. But you can see I'm just filling things up. But you get the idea. And children innately seem to know what to do with this. With my muffin tin, let's see if I can get something tall enough to see that. Oh, I also have like stainless steel bowls. I just collect those whenever I see people getting rid of them or garage sales and such. But I'm just using this to put it up here. I guess it's not really, but I've got my cupcakes, and then I may take a stick and just break. And I'm doing this because I've seen children do it over and over and over. And there is power in breaking things apart that are okay to decompose like this. So deconstructive play is what I call it. I've got a podcast episode and some resources on that. But then taking that and sticking them as candles into our cupcakes. And then I might want to decorate it even with some flowers. So I've got some of our flowers there. I might take petal by petal. And once again, I'm going to that deconstructive play. And little by little, I take it apart. This helps me see all the intricacies of the flower too. So even though it seems like play, it really becomes investigations with what the children are doing with it. And so check this out. I'm just going to put, a couple of petals on each of these. Unfortunately, we've got a lot of sun right here and it's hard to see the colors, but check that out. Doesn't that look like a tasty cupcake to celebrate? Oftentimes I see a lot of pretend play with this too, and they may be singing happy birthday and blowing the candles out or sharing with friends. So lots of options with that. And like I mentioned too, while we have our soil and our mud, we may want different consistencies for different things that we're working on. And sometimes children may just want to play with the water. So I do just kind of want to share. I'll go ahead and take a bowl. I'll go ahead and put this down a little bit lower so you can see what's happening. So I've just got a bowl. I'm going to go ahead and pour some of my water into one of my little pitcher things. And I find that children love to pour from one container to another. and into another and back into another. So that pouring happens all the time. I have this pouring container, this gravy boat, I'm sure is what it probably is. But children, it just looks like a little bit more magical, like it came from Aladdin or something, and you want to rub the side of it. But this is just a unique shape. Children love to pour. In this concoction that I'm working on, I think I'm going to lean into a little bit more of a recipe. So with that, I may want to go ahead and measure. So I'll put some more water in here. Of course, we've got some water in it already, but this is half a cup. So I'm going to measure half a cup of water in here and think about what other ingredients we need. So half a cup of water. I've got a third a cup here, maybe 1/3 a cup of soil or our mud, our moist mud. So I'm putting some in our third a cup container and leveling it off. Children watch us cooking and baking all the time in our kitchens, and they want to explore some of that as well. And so I might go ahead and put that in. And then I think I want to use some of those green things, but we probably need to shred them up a little bit. I think I'm going to go ahead for another half a cup, or let's see, this looks like a half a cup too. So I'm going to go for my half a cup. I'm going to take that and take my green stuff that I have. This is Virginia's creeper, not poison ivy. Just as an FYI, I'm going to go ahead and take some of that. And once again, leaning into that deconstructive play, I'm just going to go ahead and rip it up. So this might be shredded greens that I'm adding right now and putting some things in it. And just getting as much as I need to it. I might smell it. It does have a fresh kind of green smell to it. And I might get some more, just whatever I need to fill it up. I've just got about this much so far, so I'm just going to add a little bit more. So that ripping and shredding, this is actually good fine motor skills for children as well. And they may be stirring all the time around it. But of course, these are idea starters. Let the children play and see what they want to do with it. So I'm going to go ahead and stir up my half cup of mud with my probably 1.5 cups of water. And then I'm going to go ahead and put my shredded greens in it, whatever that is. And, ooh, wow. Check this out. It is very soupy, very watery kind of. This looks more like a soup that we may be making. So I may want to consider, what can we use for like a burner? So a tree cookie may become our stove that we're working on, and we may go ahead and use that as part of it. I know personally that I like spices in my soups and such. I could use my cinnamon. That doesn't sound perfect for a savory soup for me, but I could use some of these natural things that I found too. So if I had a teaspoon out, I could even use that, but I do have a little tiny spoon. But I've got all kinds of little maple seeds and some of those cottonwood seeds and those catechins and such. So I'm just going to go ahead and crush those up into here. But you can see that deconstruction again as it's coming out. So putting that in, and then I can measure it down in. And this turned up being little tiny pieces inside of this, which is kind of fun. And then might stir some more. After that, I might come back to my index card and start writing down what this might be. So for this, I'm going to call it mud soup. Mud soup. And sometimes I have children dictate what they want written to me. And other times I just let them write the parts they know of it. That's a pre-literacy skill that they're going to be getting better and better at it. But for me, I'm going to put 1.5 cups water, because I know how to write, half cup mud. I think it was 1/3 cup greens. And then 1 tablespoon, that's the big T. Sometimes we talk about that, of spices, whatever your spices are. And like I mentioned, ours were just our little droppings from the trees right now and such. and then mix and pretend heat. We might say heat on tree cookie. And then we want to think about serving it and then serve. So as far as serving it, there's my mud recipe. So I've got a little bit of literacy in there as well. And these could be like put in a special photo container or something like that, specifically for mud recipes. And you could even take pictures of it and pictures of their mud play and put it into a book of recipes of mud play that's happening there. So I know that I'm going to want to give this individually to people. So I might look around and see if I've got some other containers that I could use. Like I have this extra container here. So once again, that pouring. So I'm going to go ahead and pour some out and use my stick to help with a little bit of that. And then I think you will often find children looking for my spoon. Got a lot of stuff here. I've got a big ladle spoon, but you will often find children bringing you food to eat when they're making things. And I just pretend, oh, yummy. Once I did take a sip. I wouldn't recommend that. But if we can engage into their play as well, that can be very powerful with that as well. So we've got some mud soup. Yum, yum, yum. We've got our mud muffins. And there are lots of other things that we can do with mud too. We've got a recipe. We've maybe used some seasonings with that as well. And we still have more mud. And what do we want to do with the rest of our mud? Some things that I might do would be to try some other things. I might use my tree cookies in a different way. I might actually use my mud, and actually I think I want a little bit more water for this application. So I poured a little bit more water in there. I've got my stick to stir things up. And my hands are still pretty clean. Some children will get mud everywhere. Some of them will smear it on their faces too. I've been known to do that at times. Mud washes off, and you will find some children never want to touch it. And we all have different sensory cups of how much we can handle. And so having tools to interact with things can be helpful too. So what I think I'm going to do is use this to build with my other tree cookie blocks. And I just made these with some branches that I found. And so if you think about like someone who's building with bricks, they use this mortar in between things. So I'm going to use my tree cookies as my bricks. So here's my tree cookie up front here, a little bit more. It's kind of messy in here. And then I might go ahead and put some of my mud down. I might go ahead and flatten it out, smooth it across. And then I might put another tree cookie on top of it to get it stuck together. And then I might get a little bit more. Put it on my next layer, spread it out a little bit, stick my next one on, and then I can create like a sculpture or a tower with that. Or it's like I'm building a building, and I wonder what children can make with their own building of mud supplies and such. Some other things that we may do is just kind of make sculpture with mud in and of itself. I also find some children like to just make a mud ball. See if I can get enough mud out here to kind of make a mud ball. So I just take that in my hands and I roll it. This is kind of a little bit wet. So I'm just going to go ahead and squeeze some of my water out of here. And that's going to give me a drier mud to work with. And this actually is working really well. And depending on the type of soil that you have, if you have more clay in it, I know that we have some areas of our property that have a lot of clay, but you can see my mud ball. You could also make like little bricks and let those dry out with your soil, your mud, and then you'd have some bricks that may fall apart, but that could be used as part of their play too. So lots of different options. What do you all think you might explore? And really just leaving things open and for the children. I put one of my old tablecloths down. I think it was probably even gifted to me when people were downsizing or something of the sort. But I put that out to protect this. Oftentimes I will go ahead and make a small mud kitchen. I just put a couple of crates down, a plank in between. I use like an old water jug. So when the water's gone, the water's gone. And then might have all of my utensils and such in my pail. And then let the children have at it. They are pretty good at putting it together. Some other things that we may do with mud is to bring out like our trucks and cars. Those can go on their own fun muddy option with that as well. And then might try painting with mud. If I had, I've got another index card. I can try it here. I can try it with my fingers. I can try it with my stick. What's it like to paint with mud? I might even try flinging some mud. I might put parameters around that as a parent. So might get some up, and I know what's on the other side of here. So for me, I'm giving myself permission to go ahead and try flinging the mud over there. You might have a target or something up as well. And then of course the building, the recipes, etc. Really, mud has so many benefits to it, and options. It's open-ended. Children can explore it in any way that they want to. While I gave some ideas today, I wouldn't be scripting a child through how to do this. So I encourage you to think about how mud may look like in your space. This can happen on a balcony. It can happen in a backyard. I've even done mud play in the house, usually on floor that can be easily cleaned up, like the kitchen or something like that. But mud can happen anywhere. And I also will bring this pail of stuff, these utensils and things, to the beach. I'll take it out to play in the snow, etc. So it's just versatile all year round. And as things changes, we may not have green things to play with, but we may have other like leaves and other ingredients that we may have as well. Have fun with all your mud play. I'd love for you to report back to Indiana Children in Nature Network to share some of the things that you've been doing as far as mud play goes. And I'd love to see some pictures and maybe even a short video of some of the mud play that's happening. We'll also be sharing some information about benefits of mud and such, but just think about all those tactile, literacy, storytelling, dramatic play, all those skills that they're engaging in and playing with. And really that's what it's all about, is play, investigation, experimentation, and exploration. Thanks so much for joining us with Indiana Children Nature Network and Loose Parts Nature Play. Have a great mud-filled day.